Hi, everyone. I'm international publicist Michelle Tennant Nicholson. As you know, here I am in my office, and I have a special guest with me today. His name is Steve Torma, and he's actually communicating with me via the phone. So you're going to see me here on video, and then I'm going to switch over to Steve, and you're going to be able to see him. So let me go ahead and share my screen. There he is. So this is Steve. Hey, say hi, Steve.
Hey, hello, folks.
And I just want to show you his website. So it's the realcenter.org, and it has all kinds of information about him and his programs and whatnot. Real food, real family, real friendship. But Steve, the one thing that I love about Steve is that he is, I'm taking a seminar with him right now. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your background, not only with what we're doing together now, but also you have a strong background in cooperatives.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Glad to be here with you. I've had a lifelong interest in personal and social transformation and how do the two overlap and to contribute to each other. And so in my 20s, I began to realize that we needed alternatives to the present economic system. And I looked around and, of course, found that there were co-ops. So I worked for 10 years helping to co-manage. There was a team of managers, a natural foods co-op in Akron, Ohio, from 1984 through 1994. And so in that time, I got to see what helps to make co-ops work better and what things kind of get in the way. And that relates then to my work that I do at the Real Center, which is I teach classes related to communication, particularly using a system called compassionate communication. Sometimes it's called nonviolent communication. But this system of compassionate communication was created back in the 60s by a man named Marshall Rosenberg. And it fits very well for me and my personal understanding of things. I believe that, you know, our culture, I think all of humanity is on this journey right now away from the more violent kind of dominator cultures that have existed on this planet for quite a while. And we're trying to figure out how to create more compassionate, sustainable culture. And
hey, I'm going to tell you, Steve, right
yeah,
now, I've got a picture. I took a picture of from the internet while you're talking about Marshall, and
great.
he's got the jackal in one hand and the giraffe in the other hand.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so the giraffe represents compassionate consciousness and the jackal represents violent consciousness, or power with people versus power over people. So one of the beautiful things about compassionate communication is that the goal is for everybody's needs to get met. The goal is to care about everybody's needs, which of course is the basic of all world religions, love thy neighbor as thyself. So it's a way of implementing this desire to care about my needs and your needs equally. So needs, this concept of needs, is at the center of the compassionate communication system. And by needs, what we mean is that which is required for all human beings to thrive. So the belief is that all humans have the same needs. One categorization of needs is sustenance, safety, love, empathy, rest, recreation, and play. That's all one. Community, creativity, autonomy, meaning, and purpose in life. So that's what we mean by needs. And everything we do in our life is an attempt to meet a need. And nature, in its wisdom, gave us feelings in order to tell us whether our needs have been met or not. And so we guide our life choices by our feelings telling us whether needs have been met or not. And so in our relationships with other people, we're trying to, moment by moment, we're trying to just create the most positive life that we can with each other. And so that flow of conversation with people is called in NVC, or in the compassionate communication. We call that honesty and empathy. So we're tracking on our feelings and our needs, we're expressing them honestly to other people, and we're empathizing with those people. And in the process, we try to care about our needs and their needs equally. So I understand that y'all are going to be having a retreat later on this year. I understand that you're looking at some issues about how you can roll out the welcome mat, to use that image from the larger cooperative movement.
That's right. Yeah. So we are in May. We're having a retreat, and we're going to be talking about making sure that we are walking our talk around everybody welcome.
Yeah. So that's a really powerful thing to do, for an organization, to be able to communicate, to have that energy of welcome to people, and to have that energy within itself. Let me just get geeky here for a moment and bring in a thing from evolutionary psychology, which is enormously important. And the brief view of it is that as human beings, we are primates, and we've been primates for millions of years. And primate safety, the safety that we experience as primates, is belonging to the pack, belonging to a group. And so we're constantly tracking on, how am I doing in relationship to the other people that I'm in community with, particularly people that we're closest to. And we are wired very deeply that if anybody says something to us or acts in a way, or even a facial expression or body language that I interpret as, you think that I did something wrong, or you think that I'm not good enough, or you think that I made a mistake, something like that, I am wired to go into some level of fight or flight, to get anxious and nervous. So one of the things that we teach in compassionate communication, and one of the things that I've experienced a lot in my years of cooperative living, is that one of the ways for people to feel most welcome is for us to communicate in a way that doesn't imply blame or wrongness or judgment about them, but rather we communicate from this place of feelings and needs. So rather, Michelle, than if you did something, that didn't meet my needs, say you arrived late or something,
Yes.
Instead of communicating to you in the language of blame and criticism, like, why are you always late? I would go to the connection to my own feelings and needs and saying something about, hey, I'm really frustrated because I have a really need for cooperation and support that's not being met when people are late. Would you please tell me what you heard me say? So that's what we call honesty, talking about my feelings and needs instead of blaming, judging, and so forth. Or even more powerfully than that is for me to connect to what your feelings and needs are. So instead of saying, hey, you're being so irresponsible, I might start the conversation with, hey, I noticed that you've been late a few times this week. Are you really stressed out? Are you really needing some support with what's going on in your life? And then you would say whatever you'd say. And then I would eventually get to talking to you about what my feelings and needs are and how your actions are affecting, my life and the work situation, etc. So to roll out a welcome mat, or in other words, to have a quality of connection where people feel like they matter, we do that primarily through avoiding blame, judgment, diagnosis, and all those kinds of things, and being what we call more honest about our feelings and our needs. And we believe that that is the way to create the most effective, long-term, sustainable relationships for organizations and for families and other intimate relationships.
So I just want to, because I just want to show you what I'm actually showing them. So I pulled the NVC Tree of Life. So 3 focus options for connection. So you've got the verbal, nonverbal empathy, connecting with what's alive in you, self-expression, communicating what's alive in me. So, and then you have the self-empathy. So this is, I just looked to see online what will support what you're talking about right there. Yeah. So I just wanted to, like, people are like, well, why are we seeing this instead of Steve's head? That's the reason why. Just to give you a visual of what he's talking about.
Beautiful, yeah.
And what I love the most about compassionate communication. We might even call it a cooperator's communication, because it's actually so beautifully dovetailing what co-ops are trying to do in general. Cooperative businesses, and the way that they actually arrive at business growth and vision is in many ways very well suited to this line of work from martial arts.
Totally. Yes, and the ability to care about the other people that we're working with and that we're serving is really what this is all about. I mean, that's the basic idea of cooperatives. Rather than having power over and domination, we're wanting to create relationships and systems where everybody matters. And this is a huge shift, not only politically and economically, that our culture is moving toward, but psychologically and emotionally. It all goes together.
Yes, and I just, when you're talking, I was like, well, what's an example from my cooperative experience? And so I remember last year in a board meeting, I got very passionate about websites. And if we look at this model, and I'd say upon reflection that my communication was more aggressive than it should have been. It was loud. The tone was loud. There was passion. I mitigated the aggressive nature of the way it was communicated with humor, but regardless, it's still that, right? And ultimately, I did get heard, and the website is now a mobile website. But I just reflected upon that one particular interaction, and why, if you look at my self-empathy and why I was so passionate about that, is that this is what I do for a living. I'm a marketer, and I'm so in love with the Hendersonville Community Co-op that for me, it's like, this has to happen. This is like, my vision is, this is the way it must be. And how come no one can see it like I see it? And without stepping in, and I think that that's what happens around the co-ops, is that we become such cheerleaders of what's happening that we sometimes, our passion gets communicated in an angry manner versus a cooperative manner. Can you say a little more about that, what I have come to learn under your tutelage about that example? What do you see there?
Yeah. What I see is that human beings have needs, right? And everything we do is an attempt to meet a need. And we have different strategies of how to get those needs met. So in a power over or a dominator culture, we've learned to get our needs met through force. And sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it's very extreme. But we try to get our needs met by making other people do what we want them to do. Right?
Yes.
So that's the basic way that a dominator culture conditions us. And especially if we think that we're right, then we have all kinds of justifications for why it's okay for me to be violent with you. And in the compassionate communication system, we believe that I don't ever want to get my way at your expense. If I get my way at your expense, meaning I've done some kind of violence, then we've both lost. That our relationship has suffered. Anytime I get my way, then we're both going to pay for that in a lack of quality of connection in the future, lack of desire to want to be around each other, lack of ability to enjoy each other, and those kind of things adversely affect the long-term quality of our relationships.
Yes. I've changed the screen now to something that I see at compassionateinteractions.com, and they have the NVC model. So empathy is on one side, honesty is on the other, and in the center you see observations, feelings, needs, requests. And then if you're going to choose to empathize, the things, you heard me say, you saw, you feel, you were wanting, you would like me to. On the honesty side is, I hear, I see, I feel, I would like to, would you be willing to? And I think that what I'm learning from you, Steve, and what I now feel would really grace our retreat with something beautiful. And I did speak to our retreat facilitator and let him know that we would be doing this, and he thought it was wonderful. But just really having, without having done, years and years of study around compassionate communication, just some quick takeaways that we could take into retreat to speak gently with each other. And you've been around cooperatives. What are some things that we need to look out for that day and then ongoingly?
Well, first would be to develop more awareness around needs, what we mean by needs, and awareness around feelings, and to develop a literacy of being able to talk about feelings and needs. That's a basic starting point. And to develop the ability to share person to person what I'm actually feeling and needing and requesting in any particular moment, right? That model that you just put up on the screen.
Yes.
Observation, feeling, need, and request. So instead of going back to the example of you being late, instead of me just sharing my judgments with you, I'm actually can know what I'm feeling and know what I'm needing. Or in order to ask you to be curious about, I wonder what you're feeling and wonder what you're needing. So developing a feeling and need literacy is very foundational to being able to have relationships, sustainable, compassionate relationships with each other. So that would be one of the most foundational pieces to do. And there are lots of other things, but that to me is like the most basic.
Well, and I just want to close by saying, I think that there's a quote here from Marshall. Let me put it back over here on the screen. Mm-hmm. Judgments of others contribute to self-fulfilling prophecies. Mm-hmm. And I was just speaking to somebody this morning about their mother. Mm-hmm. And she said, my mother is narcissistic, and mm-hmm. therefore I will never have a connection or relationship with her. Uh-huh. And one thing that it occurred to me is that narcissism is a judgment, mm-hmm. right? So I think and that's something that we practice in class together. You have us go through and you always constantly remind us, well, that's a judgment. Mm-hmm. That's not really a fact. That's not really something that's happening. That's not really a feeling or a need. That's a judgment that you have about another person. And then what Marshall says is that, what if you, basically what he's saying is if you think somebody's narcissistic, guess what? They're going to show up that way. Mm-hmm. Do you hear something else in what Marshall is saying there?
Well, I want to make a clear distinction about two types of judgments. Because sometimes it can sound as if NVC is kind of being anti-intellectual because we're just going to focus on our feelings and we're not going to use our minds to. But there are two types of judgments. There's moralistic judgments, like you are a bad person, you're an idiot, you're this, you're that. And then the other kind of judgments you could call maybe functional judgments. And those are judgments, or we might say assessments, about whether a certain act meets a need or not. Mm. So I want to be very good at those kinds of judgments. I want to be very perceptive and communicate clearly to other people about what things meet my needs and what things don't meet my needs. I want to be really curious about other people, finding out from them what their needs are and what actions would serve those needs getting met or not. So that's a type of judgment that's very important. And moralistic judgments, we believe, get in the way of creating the kind of relationships that we want.
Mm. Well, I so appreciate your time with me today, mm-hmm. and I'm sure that the other directors will want to hear more from you. I do want to give a shout out to, I've been traveling a lot, and I don't think you know this, Steve, but I listened to the audio version of Nonviolent Communication. And by the way, everybody talks about Marshall's work, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson. I mean, this is considered, one of the gold standards for any type of personal development.
Yes,
so I just loved the audio version because it was Marshall speaking, and it was very quick actually. And I just put it on in my car and just listened to it. You could also listen to it just walking, and his voice is very soothing. And I think I spent look here, the e-textbook is $10. I think that my audio thing was either free or $9. And it literally changed my life listening to that book. And it gave me such an introductory immersion that I had like then what you were teaching us, Steve, in a whole other way. And so I highly recommend that to people. If this interests you at all, that's a good first step. Just get the Nonviolent Communication on audio and then listen to it. Any other final words for you?
Oh, just that I have tremendous gratitude to people who are creating cooperative organizations and creating cooperative alternatives, because obviously the world is in a great need for models of ways to be with each other as we move out of the dominator world and move into this world of more just, sustainable planet that we're moving towards. So thank you to all the great work that y'all are doing.
And thank you for leading the way in Asheville to teach us how to be in partnership and stop dominating each other, and how to navigate systems that are really about violence and how to choose another path in those. I really thank you for what you're teaching me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for spending time today with me to do this for the Hendersonville Community Co-op.
Thanks for asking me. Good to be with you.
Bye.